Hi everyone, this is going to be a first access launch party type video. We're launching College Football 27 tonight. It's live in the WolverineStudios.com store for early purchase. And we're just going to hang out, kind of walk through some of the screens, see if some folks join us, have any questions, kind of answer those as we go. I don't know if this is going to make it into a YouTube video, but we have done a couple of pre-release streams where we put them on YouTube so you could specifically look at some of the new things coming to the game. Those are already available on our Wolverine Studios YouTube channel. So if you want to see more of a deep dive into a couple of the bigger features that we're launching with, you're more than welcome to go check us out on YouTube. So we'll let folks trickle in. I see a couple of guys here. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining. Just kind of clicking around in the game, just having fun looking at different screens, reminding myself of all the things that we've done and the work we put in. So those of you that are showing up in chat, if you have any questions, feel free to post them up. Kind of hanging out tonight. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna go through some of the updates I have on my list, just to kind of remind myself. There's been so much work put into this over the summer that I've uh, I kind of forgotten how many different things we added in at the beginning of the cycle as to what we've been working on at the very end. So I am going to go look at those. I got a message in the chat. Uh, First off, mic check. Can you hear me okay? Just to make sure that's all working. But the message is seeing that round five Mass head coach firing. Okay, so that's feedback on the coach carousel that we need to look at. Um, the final round of head coach hiring is a little bit different this time around because all of the budgets are all tied up together. So you'll have your recruiting budget and your facilities budget, recruiting spend, coaching spend, the amount you've committed to your facilities already. And teams, if they're not careful, can get themselves into a situation where they can't hire a tier head coach because they've spent it all elsewhere. Either they've overpaid their coordinators or they've overextended on upgrades to their facilities or they've lost the last couple of years and their budget's decreased a little bit because that does affect things as well. So, but it is first access. That's some really good feedback on how these games are played multi years to see how the game reacts as you go forward. So it's definitely something I'll add to the list to take a look at. But yeah, so while we're there, this is probably one of the biggest pieces of the game that we've updated this particular iteration. So for CF27, we've added in facilities. Before we had a facilities rating, which would kind of, either boost or harm your recruiting a little bit. And now there's take a little bit more of an active role in it. So you're responsible for maintaining your facilities. You're responsible for upgrading them. You're going to have to make a risk versus reward call on whether stay with an older building, maybe a lower level, and focus more of your money on recruiting, or if have an excess of funds, then you're able to spend a little bit more, improving your state of facilities. Each of the facilities will have different things that it affects. So you'll have like training centers affect training, medical effects, how well kids recover. Recruiting center affects recruiting. Stadium basically affects recruiting as well. Can also affect NIL, academics. Uh, this one ties into how well you can use the academic pitch when you try and recruit athletes. And then staff support is kind of a peanut butter spread on everything. It affects pretty much all aspects of it. The better your staff is, the better PCs you give them, the better facilities facilities, the better the office, the surroundings, all that. The more important that staff support is, so it can affect several aspects of your your team. So, reading in the chat, we're still chatting about ways to look at coach carousels. So at the end of a season, coaches uh, you can extend them, or if you decide not to extend them, or if a coach retires or whatnot, you're responsible for hiring a new coach. So that's not new to this game, but with the budgetary constraints and all that, you'll have to pay a little bit more attention to how much you're spending on your coaches. So there may still be work for me to do specifically around teams focusing on their more important positions first. So obviously, we probably want them hiring a head coach, uh, spending their money there versus tying it all up with all of the other positions that may be a little bit less important, and then running out of money to actually hire the head coach they want. So, I mean, that's a good call to take a look at that and make sure that they're prioritizing. Off the top of my head, I don't know if the code is already doing some of that already, but if not, we can add it, and if it is, we can make it stronger. So that would also help with, you know, teams leaving their head coach in an empty state. Uh, yeah, the facilities is going to be kind of interesting because it it affects pretty much everything, so you can't just ignore it. But you you can put only as much focus into it as you want. And so the teams that really try and drive these numbers high, you're going to see them outperforming other teams that don't. So this may be a way to take a team with a particular prestige ranking and maybe a team in the mid 70s is outperforming recruiting against teams in the mid 80s. Uh, Maybe teams with lower budgets, if they spend it right on their facilities, will outperform mid-tier teams. Maybe some low-tier teams will start to put some pressure on the bigger teams. So that's it's going to be interesting to see how folks apply that. Just it can be a pretty significant aspect of the game. Online leagues, I know, are gonna they'll put it through its paces to kind of show the highlights of it as people figure out what works and what doesn't. Uh, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that piece of it. So some of the other things that we've changed, I think, that are pretty significant, um, is around training. So we've added a significant update to the training module, which I think is going to be a welcome thing for folks who didn't really find much use in the previous one. You kind of manage by numbers. You set it to a certain number, you just kind of leave it alone. There wasn't a whole lot of in-depth things that you could do with it. So now training is kind of a take on a real life training management module. So it basically your team has so many training sessions that it can invite kids to. All the coaches will have preferences on where they want the kids to work, what they want them to work on, how hard to drill them, whether they take weeks off, those kinds of things. You don't want the kids burning out. We always want this again to be a risk reward kind of thing where you could really work the kids out quite often, but you run the risk of them burning out, losing morale, transferring, all the negatives that can happen with your kids in a program. So this is this will be another fun feature to see how people take advantage of this because it's no longer just managing to a number. This is uh, each of your coaches will have their preferences, or you can kind of override it, and then you are responsible for setting up what particular aspect of training you want the kid to focus on. So trainers might look at one thing, your position coaches might look at different things, and then each of these also has uh, aspects such as social or mental or injury rest or time for team meetings. Like all of these things, some of them don't drive burnout up, some do. So if you don't put enough rest in there, it'll drive burnout up. So the auto managed burnout, basically you could set this and forget it. You set it the way that the head coaches want, and then each week the coaches will pick their own schedule again. So if you have the check mark for auto manage, it'll as the burnout starts getting higher and higher, you'll start seeing coaches incorporate uh, more and more rest weeks in, so that the burnout starts to decrease. So you kind of decide how close to the sun you want to fly with these guys, and the schedule summary just shows based on the sessions that you picked, kind of what is the most impactful area of training that's going to occur week to week. And then the lock button is interesting because the lock button allows you to, so if you want your head trainer to focus on physical, and then you don't want them changing week to week, you can set that lock button so that, hey, I set this, don't change it, leave it there. So it's a pretty interesting way of handling training. Asger set all this up, and I think it's going to be a pretty impactful module again, just like the facilities is. We got some big hitters this time around for CF27. So while we're in the player page, I can also talk a little bit about uh, the social tab has changed a bit. So for the social tab, we've added a couple of concepts called polling and personality test. So this is a little bit of uh, insight into how the general simulation is reacting to the players. So for coaches and fans in front office and media, they're all gonna, depending on how the kids do, how well they perform, how much they play, how much they don't play, how much the teammates like them, all that kind of stuff. This will, change week to week as they poll. You can kind of see the tooltip. We tried to add as many tooltips as we could because there's a lot of new stuff in here. Uh, so we'll have the polling shows perceptions of the player based on those segments, and then you can kind of see whether the polling in the positive or in the negative. Uh, and so then the polling will also affect, background, social events, morale changes, uh, those kinds of things. So transfer chances, all that stuff. So this just kind of gives you a way to see what direction those things are going and how they might be affecting other parts of the team. Yeah, question in the chat about when the players are getting worn out. Yeah, so when a player is in training and their burnout starts to get really high, you're going to want to go in here and reduce their workload, have more rest sessions, that kind of thing. And so the email, you can get emails from your coaches and your trainers and whatnot that tell you, hey, this, or from the kid themselves, and say, hey, you're working them too hard, and they're going to get frustrated and start to incur injury risk and morale decline, that kind of thing. So this would be where you'd fix that by introducing more rest days. So this is a big, uh, detailed explanation on how all that works. So if you're purchasing on FirstAccess, or if you're going to wait for the regular release, these will all be, really helpful pieces of information when you're in these screens, so you understand a little bit more about how these things work and what you're supposed to do about them. So back to this social tab. Um, uh, Before that, I'll answer the question in chat. Importing an earlier league. Yeah, so and this is one of the things we're most proud about. Pretty much every year that we've done college or pro football, you can go back, I guess, a decade now to some of those leagues in the very beginning and bring them forward. We don't recommend trying to take a, a pro football 16 league into PF26 or a college 18 league into directly into college 27, but in theory you can do it. Um, it's a pretty big jump at this point. You might have some unintended consequences to doing that. It's one where you might want to try and take like an 18 league into 20 and then into 22 into 24 and then maybe to 27 or something like that, or reach out to us on our support page or on Discord, and we could certainly look at doing that for you. But going from a 26 to a 27 or even a 24 to a 27, those should work really well because all of these things are constantly just added on. So they'll get seeded, they'll get set by default. They'll initialize to certain values, just like if you were creating a new player. Um, so yeah, even migrating last year's leagues, all of this stuff will continue to work. Um, you can't go backwards. So once you bring it forward to like 27, you can't go back to 26 because those save files will be incompatible. But going from 26 forward to 27, yeah, that should work just fine. I think we've actually had some folks do that in our on our beta test team just to make sure that that's all working right. But again, we're in first access, so if you come across any issues with any of these screens, that's definitely the time to kind of let us know how it's working. Um, so yeah, social. The other one that's on here is personality test. So this is another Asger creation. Behind the scenes, we've always kind of had personalities for the players. That's kind of this, it ties into the social type a little bit. This just gives them more of a persona. Like it makes the players seem a little bit more real than just numbers and stats. So you can kind of see this kid's more interested in personal life than his career, and he's excitable, he's an optimist, he's a perfectionist, right? He's a little hesitant. Uh, he's not super ambitious, right? So this just kind of gives you personality information on, what these kids are, how they're turning out. So another big wall of text here, but basically shows you all the differences in the different aspects of a personality and some of what it may affect in the sim itself. So I'm not gonna read all this on stream, but yeah, Asger did a good job, implementing all this, and we're trying again to add as much information to these little help bubbles as we can, just because we know it's a lot of new stuff. That's those two things. Switch gears a little bit and move over to strategy because some of the more recent things that we've done I think are pretty interesting. I've never liked having numbers on this particular screen. The blitz weight always confused people. It was not, yeah, and it's all on us. I mean, it's not, it just, it made sense to me at the time, but, trying to get away from just spreadsheets of numbers and trying to get to things that are a little more easily digestible. So we've switched this screen up. We've done two major things on this. One is we've changed the run pass weights to be more descriptive. So you can move from a max run all the way up to a max pass. So there's uh, 10 different levels of uh, focus that you can put on this. Behind the scenes, it kind of works the same way, right? You can max run, and that doesn't necessarily mean run 100% of the time. It just means either more often than not, you're going to run to the maximum that the sim is allowing for run pass ratios. So, not, the NFL is not, NCAA. No pro or no college org, nobody just runs 100% of the time. Nobody just passes 100% of the time. So there's always been a historical average that's kind of shifted over the years. Uh, old school football used to do a lot more running, and new school football does a lot more passing. But uh, the way these run pass weights work should be a little easier to understand that you're not setting this to 0, you're not setting it to 100. Like, what's the difference between 3 and 4 or 9 and 12, right? It didn't make a whole lot of sense. So hopefully these words mean a little bit more so you understand that you're just kind of moving up to the maximum amount of passing or you're moving down to the max amount of running. It's the same way with blitz weight. So this is the minimum. This is don't blitz it, hardly at all, and then all the way up to yeah, blitz as much as possible. So that's how those work. The other major thing on this screen is the new drop down for package. Uh, so what we've done here is allow you to bypass what typically is set at a formation level and instead now is set at a scenario level. So some folks, these are CPU-based teams, so they just have the default package or they have their backup packages. But some folks will generate 5, 10, 100. I don't know how many packages people are up to these days, but they will create custom packages based off playbooks and those kinds of things for many, many, many different scenarios. And before, you could only set it kind of based off your formation. What this override does is allows you to set the package for a specific scenario instead. So no matter what formation you're in first and 10, if you want an air raid package or whatever set up, you can create that package under your custom playbooks and then put the package in, uh, sorry, not playbooks, depth charts. Um, this is depth charts, not playbooks. I'm sorry if I am misspeaking there. So the packages are personnel packages. So if you want first and 10 always to be your jumbo, you know, your biggest tight ends, your biggest receivers, your biggest running backs, and you create a a depth chart specifically for that, then yeah, you're good to go. Probably not going to come into play much on 1st and 10 because you're basically going to want that one to just follow whatever formation you set. But maybe for goal line, you always want a specific package in there for goal line. Um, so that's what this does. Sorry, it doesn't have anything to do with playbooks. So your playbook is here. Um, but that way, if I was to go into my depth chart and create a new package, and I say I wanted only a specific person in there on my goal line situations, or I wanted, a specific fullback, specific tight ends, uh, then you're able to set up those new packages. And then when you go back to strategy, you can change them here. So typically, the way it worked before was you had a run package and a pass package, and it would pick those based off of the formation you were in. So if you were in pro set, it would always pick whatever package you wanted for your pro set formation, regardless of whether you were in 4th and 1 or you know 1st and 10 or whatever. It didn't matter. It would use whatever the formation package setting was. So now you could say, you know what, for this particular scenario, don't worry about what package, what depth chart I'm using for that formation. Use the one I want specifically for that scenario. So hopefully that works. Gives people a little bit more flexibility in setting these things up so that they can, really dial in how they want their depth charts to be deployed. Um, so yeah, that's a pretty significant change to the play calling menu. Yeah, the personality tests. I'm reading from chat. The personality tests uh, are in the game right now. It could be depending on settings. Uh, you may need to enable show personality tests here. So existing leagues might not have those. New leagues, I think that's on by default. That's where that is. So yeah, we've talked about training, talked about play calling, talked about polling, facilities, financials, and budgets. Now we can talk a little bit about recruiting. So the recruiting has changed somewhat significantly as well. So it's still kind of the same backbone that we've had for several years now, but we've we've made some significant changes here so that I'm constantly trying to dial this in. Like this screen when you're recruiting for 25, 30 scholarships and you have, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of targets that you're trying to sort through. This screen's just overwhelming. There's just not an easy way to do it when you're just dealing with that many kids. So we continually try and refine this, try and make it a little more user friendly, a little easier to understand. And so this year's version, we've kind of collapsed everything down into just one recruiting action. So every week you decide which particular action you want to take for your recruit. And then during that contact or the visit that you're doing, you have a pitch that you can set. So this used to be in a different section before. This used to be tied on the player screen itself. We've moved it in here and tied it specifically to the recruiting actions. So you basically get to focus on a particular aspect of your team, whether it's the playing time you can offer, your organization, your academics, which again ties back to the facilities that we highlighted earlier. But you basically pick your pitch. Like this is your chance to impress the recruit. So yeah, you're going to want to pick the right thing. Um, promise returns from last year's version. This is where you could make promises. Uh, you know, you can you put these in. It will boost the interest meter of the recruit. If you start promising them things, they get excited about it. But there are an awful lot of transfers if you start breaking your promises. So it's definitely something that you'll want to keep an eye on. And the new for 27 is this NIL offer. So NIL for previous versions was just kind of a boost to recruiting, kind of tied to prestige, that kind of thing. now you actually have a NIL budget, um, and then you have a tier offer that you could make. And I added some information to the tooltip. So this basically the NIL offer assigns your NIL collective to make an offer to the recruit. Tier one's the cheapest, tier five's the most expensive, and then it sticks every year that the kid is uh, on your team. So this would be for all 4 years that they're there, or 3 years and transfer, that kind of thing. So the NIL, basically, this is another one of those things that affects the recruiting action that you're doing. The higher the offer that the NIL is making, the the more impactful, the higher the interest that your uh, that your recruiting action takes. The other thing about NIL offers is similar to promises. Once you make them, you can't take them back. So if you promise a kid in week two that, oh yeah, we're gonna win a championship, and in week four you're like, well, I don't really want to make that promise anymore. It's too late. You've already made the offer. You've already made the promise. So you've already got some reward for making that promise while you were recruiting the kid. So yeah, you can't, no take backsies on that. Same with the NIL offer. Once you direct them, your NIL collective, to make an offer, um, they will make that offer and it will stay there until you sign the kid or until the kid um, kind of disappears from your target list. So at that point, you can recoup that money. So if the kid commits somewhere else, then the NIL just says, okay, well, that offer just doesn't exist anymore, and they can reallocate that money elsewhere. But while you're in the middle of recruiting a kid before he's committed, yeah, that number sticks. So you have to be careful about over promising all these things and running out of NIL money, or um, make sure that if you're going to offer tier five to a kid, you're basically offering them the moon. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that to the kids that you really, really want to attract. And then the scholarship boxes still, whenever you're ready to offer them a scholarship, you're good to go. So if you wanted to see some of the NIL offer information, um, you can see it in Team Info. So this and I need to probably look at adding NIL information to the team office as well. Um, it needs to be a little bit more front and center. So I'll take an action item to look at that. But the team info shows you your budget. So this shows the total budget, the staff budget, recruiting, amount spent, facilities, and then the NIL. This is your NIL budget. So this tracks really closely with uh, Prestige, but yeah, you'll have an NIL budget. There'll be a roster amount that is uh, basically how much your roster is already using your NIL money. So this would be kids you signed previous year. Uh, so like I said, it sticks for all 4 years. If you make a $1 million offer to a kid, you're going to pay him $1 million. You're not paying him. NIL is paying him every year. So that would be a reduction of that budget. And then the recruits is how much you've currently allocated to next year's signing class. So you can kind of see this is how much budget you have, this is how much you're currently in for on your current roster, and then this is how much you can spend on recruits. So that's how all of those work. Um, and then yeah, the NIL, you can turn all of this off. The NIL can just be disabled in settings if you wish, but a lot of people wanted to do a little bit more with the NIL. Some of this is parallel to the college basketball game, uh, trying to make them not exactly the same, but still kind of similar in the way that we're handling NIL. So we don't want to deal with um, another like paying kids directly. This is going to be too much to manage. But as a aspect of recruiting, I think it works pretty well in the actions as an inflator impact to your particular action that you're taking. So pitch will impact it, promise will impact, NIL offer will impact, your prestige will impact it, the kid's personality will impact it. There are dozens, if not a couple of hundred different aspects of recruiting that are factored into the game. So I think it's to be pretty complicated when the kids are trying to figure out where they're going to go and what means the most to them, what team seems to be the best fit for them, and what coaching staff excites them the most, and all those things are all factored in. It's just all behind the scenes, trying to make this as simple as possible for folks to take advantage of. The other interesting part about this is if I go ahead and sim forward a couple of weeks. Yeah, to answer the question in chat, Talon, yeah, the NIL budgets are kind of seeded based off of prestige, um, and maybe something that we can look at tweaking for modders to go in if you wanted a team like what would be a good example, like Oregon or somebody like that having a mid-tier prestige, not mid-tier, they're still really high at 87, but they might have a large NIL budget compared to what their prestige is. We can look at disconnecting those just to make it um, not tied specifically to it. And that would go for any of these schools. Like some of these schools have massive NILs behind them, um, and maybe they're disproportionate to their prestige. So I don't remember if I added it to the team configuration. I don't believe I did. So yeah, their NIL budget is not something that could be edited directly, but it's certainly something we can look into. Okay. Yeah, what I wanted to look at this recruiting. If we look at some of these kids where we've actually done official visits, oh, and this might not work because of the mode I'm in. So when you're in logged into a team, and I need to look into this. Uh, these guys should already be interviewed. I'm going to sim another couple of weeks. Maybe it's just not gone into effect yet. Basically, as the and it could be because these are yeah these are. I'm going to change South Bend to a human team just for a moment. Uh, so what I'm looking for is when you recruit kids, we have a new feature that allows these kids to give feedback on how well your recruiting pitch worked. Uh, so here it is. So it doesn't. It's not turned on for CPU teams because it's really chatty. We tried to save the bandwidth and the data so that we're not doing that. So this one's a quarterback that Notre Dame's recruiting. You can see how many offers he's got, and you could see week to week what his responses were. So I can't go back at this point because I just now switched him to human. But this is an example of what you're going to see. You're going to see a text blurb that basically says, "Hey, here's how well your pitch did. Here's what he liked. Here's what he didn't like." Um, whether it was impactful or just kind of meh, and then uh, kind of tells you what he's looking for next. Does he use the same pitch again? Do you pick a different pitch? Uh, kind of gives you a little bit of feedback on, you know, why his interest might not be going up as high as it should. So yeah, that's what the recruiting response is. And then we still have scouting reports. We still have recruit opinions, where you kind of just get a basic blurb about what they're doing. This is just their opinions overall. This is the response to the specific recruiting action you took for the week. Uh, and then the other big thing that we changed again, trying to get away from numbers, like managing the spreadsheets. We want to reduce that. And I've realized that there's still a massive amount of numbers in a game, but we're trying to target some of these a little bit better. So the coach grades now, these guys will just tell you whether they are high priority targets or whether they're just kind of, I could take them or leave them. And the reason we switched that is because the coach grades didn't make a lot of sense to people who are just looking at the numbers. Like, is the higher number the better? Yes. Well, what's the max number? Well, theoretically, there wasn't a max, but in reality, the max was somewhere between 40 and 50 or something like that. So, um, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense to people who were just trying to figure out what the numbers meant. So we switched it around. So now your coach grades are, yeah, I mean, this guy's a high priority, or yeah, or I don't, he's just strong. So your head coach and your OC are like, yeah, he's pretty good, and but your DC, who's kind of responsible for linebackers, says, yeah, okay, we'll add him to the list, but he's not a strong target. He's just kind of there. Um, so yeah, you can go through and see like, he likes this guy. Uh, so you're gonna take your defensive coordinator's recommendation on a center? Maybe not, but yeah, they still have all three grades. Um, they don't like this guy much. He just doesn't seem to either. He doesn't fit their system. He's not jiving with the coach's personalities. Uh, so yeah, keep him on the list. But even though he's a 4-star, they, the fifth best California defensive end, they're still saying, yeah, okay, he's just a low priority target. Whereas this running back, they say, yeah, go get number 17 running back in the class. So this is a number or another. Sorry, not a number. This is another status developmental target. Hey, yeah, go ahead. I think he could get good. So take him and we'll work on him. Um, so this was definitely kind of an interesting thing to put into the game. Like I said, trying to get rid of numbers or at least make the numbers more meaningful and then replace them with more text. So it's a little bit more interesting to people, a little bit more realistic as to what you would get. Um, yeah, so the question in chat or the comment in chat about recruiting actions and pitching things like location or whatever, like, these things are really complicated to to decipher because you might pitch location, but if the kid doesn't care about location, or if he's just kind of on the fence about it, or there's other things that he cares more about, maybe location doesn't hit real strong one week. Um, then maybe you try it again and maybe it does. Because there's so many different factors going into these things that, um, yeah, getting that feedback, letting you know, well, yeah, he kind of liked location, and that was a positive, but these other things were negatives, and that's why maybe you didn't get the outcome that you were expecting. Uh, yeah, so the coach grades are like we don't have coach grades for every single position or uh, uh, position coach. So I mean that's good feedback. We we've got just the main three, your coordinators, because we don't want just a wall of text here for everybody, but it might make sense to uh, distill this down to the head coach, to maybe your coordinator, and then your position coach, and just those three instead of getting a DC's opinion on a quarterback. Um, that might make more sense. We can look at tweaking that, but right now it still mirrors kind of the same behind the scenes information that we had before that the coaches are, even though he's evaluating a kid that maybe won't be his, he still has preferences on what he wants to see in a quarterback, in case maybe he does become a head coach. So some of those things do affect things, but this could be tweaked. We're still like tonight. We're celebrating first access, so there's still plenty of time to get some feedback in on what's working, what's not, what's better, what could be improved still. So we'll take all feedback that you guys have. And yeah, so that's another aspect of this that again, trying to get more transparency, more feedback, like letting the player know not only what do I need to do, how does this thing work, what do I do? There's a lot of stuff on the screen. Uh, so not only what do I do, but how is it working? How is it going? Did I do good? Did I win? Are you winning? I don't know. So this, being able to go in to these kids and look at, you know, here's a guy who's targeted on location. So just again, these responses are pretty varied. I tried to put a lot of work into making them coherent. Um, and yeah, so hopefully that's a welcome change. So you can actually see why a kid is doing what he's doing. Um, some housekeeping. These checkboxes allow you to hide or unhide the selected ones and then add selected targets, which is nice because then you can mass do that. But you can also right click. Um, I've been hesitant to do right clicking because it's not discoverable. You don't know that you can right click something until you just start right clicking. And I didn't want to right click everywhere in the app because, again, then now we're going to have people right clicking everything just to see if it works. It doesn't. We don't do right clicks very often, but in this particular case, it was like, yeah, I just want to hide this guy. So yeah, right click, hide, you're good to go. Kind of up to you whether you want to do it this way or you want to use the checkboxes. Either way works. Yeah, so I can go over some other things. Right here, we're gonna go here. I haven't tested this recently. Uh, hopefully, I haven't broken anything with the last couple of builds. But the the screens are now a little smoother. We changed kind of the way the rendering works, so the screens they just work a lot smoother. They don't have that little stuttery effect that they used to. I was able to figure out how to fix that. So hopefully that makes these things a little bit easier to watch. Uh, and then that's how those work. If you go full screen, you can still enable follow the ball, which again, this is a lot smoother now. So it zooms in, follows the ball. Again, it's a lot smoother. It won't be as herky jerky. Um, so hopefully that allows you to zoom in a lot more to these things. And the same field effects work as before. So you can change these to animated players. You can change whether or not this thing is slanted or whether it's just completely top down. All of those things continue to work. Hopefully, this implementation of this follow the ball camera is much more palatable than the last ones. Those were a stuttery mess, and I never did figure out why, but I was able to fix them. So yeah, I like watching the replays. I think those are fun when you look at a weekly recap of things. So rapid fire. Um, I'm going to go through some of the other things off my list. So we've updated for 2027 conference alignments, schedules. These should all be correct as of the latest information I had when I worked on it. Um, we've updated the coach playbooks. So the playbooks that get generated by the coaches should be a little bit more uh, tied into what their particular preferences and whatnot are. I tweaked writing these as well. Hopefully, they're a little bit more meaningful. Um, we added help icons and information in as many places as I could come up with it. If there's any that you want more information on without having to go to the help system, let me know. I've covered as many of them as I was thinking about, but again, there's certainly places that we could add more. This is the finance screen that shows you your NIL budget. Probably need to migrate another one of these over to dashboard so that it's not hidden in staff, but that's where that is. Um, yeah, the recruiting has been tweaked, so the recruits pick uh, based off of a fit with your program, and then again, that's what drives kind of that response that you see. The CPU team should recruit, uh, target their recruits a little bit better. We changed the logic so that hopefully they're picking more intelligently. We've added auto options for recruiting and NIL. So when you go in here to recruiting and you're here, you're able to delegate. So that fixes that. And then there's a bunch of things in my other category. So updates to play calling on nickel and dime. So it doesn't use nickel and dime the way it used to. It used to be it was first class citizen. Now they pick the right ones based off of scenarios a little bit more. We updated end of half logic. We updated tempo and timeout usage. So if you're winning, you should slow it down, try to run out the clock. If you're losing, you'll speed it up and use timeouts hopefully a little bit better than before. Uh, Same with spike, field goal logic. Hopefully that's better than it was before. Those things are never going to be perfect because they're not intended to be perfect. Everybody's view of how aggressive somebody should be or how what a play call should be is different, and all the coaches are different. So your coaches are going to differ in even against you, the player. So you might think, hey, you should never do this, but the coach is like, yeah, maybe once in a blue moon I'll do it, or maybe more than a blue moon I'm going to do it. Um, that's kind of it's built in there intentionally, and I've resisted like just I don't want just a flat out sim that is you know neutral and sterile and everybody makes the same decisions, and that just to me is boring. I want things to be a little spicy at times. I want coaches to make mistakes. I want plays to not always make sense because to me that's real life. Every week you see coaches doing weird things. Every single week you'll see at least one game where you're like, what is that guy doing? And sometimes it works and you're like, oh, that guy's a genius, and other times it doesn't. And you're like, yeah, you should never do that, but he did. So yeah, the game models that. uh, there's some, that we continue to tweak. There's a difference between things being a bug, meaning, it's just factoring in the wrong aspects of things altogether, and we need to fix it. We're more than willing to change those. But coding a little bit of chaos into the game, yeah, I'm leaving that. So I think that's fun. That's one of the things I like about these is, watching it. Oh man, that guy messed up, but it makes it interesting. Uh, Yeah, it's already talked about smoother animations. We did tweak some play analysis stuff. We did fix the scheduling to be unlimited now. So instead of just being three of these, you could technically, put a whole schedule on there if you wanted. It's not going to match very well with the other opponents, but you can, line up a whole bunch of them on there. Um, so that is another thing that we've done so that you're able to do just more than three. And then the only other thing that is on my list for people who might be joining late, uh, yeah, I can do this. On here, we now have a quick start. So what the quick start does is it creates a sandbox league well, it says in the tooltip there. It creates a sandbox league with defaults. So if you don't want to deal with, oh, I don't know what any of this stuff is, I don't know what any of this means, well, now you just click quick start. It creates a league for you, it gets you into the game. put you in the mode with the standard settings that we recommend, and then at that point you are able to just start poking around and playing around without getting overwhelmed by clicking new league and trying to like, oh, now I don't know what any of these things mean, so how am I supposed to pick it? So for new players, hopefully the quick start is helpful. A couple of questions in chat. Are we going to be able to define the number of conference games, 8 versus 9? No, I didn't do that. I can't get to it from here either because I don't have a league in the right stage. But in league configuration, when you go in to do your um, uh, conference uh, realignments, you can change what conference format you're using, and that will dictate how many uh, conference games they're going to be. I think right now they're all set to 9, but I could be mistaken. I haven't looked at that piece in a while. Because I for some reason I want to say they were 9, and then you'd have 3 out of conference, non-conference matchups by default. But there very well could be some league formats that are using 8. I can't say for sure, but but it's not configurable by the player. If you want to configure those kinds of things, you would have to change the way you run the league and import a custom schedule, and then you could certainly override it at that point because you could dictate all of those things. And then the second question was, what about the changes to nickel and dime? So before, it just uses we tied this also to the match cornerback setting. Basically now you'll see more nickel and dime when you're in third and long, uh, when you're in pass protect kind of things. So coaches pick those better instead of nickel used to be a first class uh, look for coaches generating their playbooks. So you'd have a mix of 4-3, 3-4 in nickel or whatever, and now they're more they stick to the bases and then they can flex into nickel and dime under some of their plays versus being like a whole nickel playbook, which doesn't make sense. Yeah, so first class basically means nickel and dime are no longer the same priority level as 3-4 or 4-3 or 5-2. So that's that's what I meant by first class. Um, and I think you'll see that as you go into to look at the coaching playbooks and kind of see how they're set up. Hopefully, they mirror the personality of the coaches a little bit better than they used to. Those are a lot of the features that we wanted to do. Somebody asked for something just the other day because they were trying to do a configuration and they wanted the ID of the team. So I was able to add that in for the build. So there's like, it doesn't matter what the ask is. If it's something small or something impactful that we think would be usable, yeah, by all means, you know, shoot me a note. Uh, I know we've changed our support site. We had some issues with the previous ones. We've moved support sites, but you can go to wolverinestudios.com/support and open a ticket or request there. And those get routed to me, or you can hop into our Discord and be just join the community and chat there. There's a lot of really passionate folks on there about the game and football in general. So that's a great way to ask questions or learn about the game or you know make requests since we're in first access. Yeah, first access will run about 2 weeks. You got a couple of weeks to go to wolverinestudios.com and download the demo, play first access, um, buy it at a discount. If you've been a long time buyer, you'll probably have an email with an additional discount in your inbox. So for sure, be checking those out. That's a great way to get involved with CF27. And then we'll at some point we'll have a Steam launch. We'll have an official launch. I think Gary's planning on the Steam launch also having a little bit of a discount. So we're good to go there. There might be some other announcements as we go forward on those things as we get closer to the launch. All right. Well, question in chat: have new features for PF26 been ported over, such as saving game plans? I don't remember if I did that. Let's check. I'm gonna have to go back and refresh my memory on what I did in Pro Football that we would want to see ported over here. Um, I don't remember. I don't remember what the difference was. Um, yeah, I'll add it to my list to go double check and see what it was that we changed in Pro. If it's not here, then I'll evaluate that and see if it's something. Yeah, I don't know specifically what we did in Pro that's not in college. So again, I'll go back and double check that. There were some things that we did in Pro game that we might want to port over. I've actually been more focused on porting the college stuff over to Pro because of the changes that we've made behind the scenes. But I mean, it's a good thing to go double check and see. I also have a chat. When does it release? So we just launched First Access today. So that's where you can buy the game at a discount from our WolverineStudios.com store. Uh, you buy it through the store, you get a little bit of a discount, and then you can play it tonight. Or you can download it as a demo. Just click the try button or trial button when you get to the little license screen, and then it'll unlock like a 7-day demo where you can play it for a week and see what you think. And if you like it, then you can go back and purchase it from the store. The official release is probably 2 weeks out. That's when we do an official launch, and we also should launch it on Steam about the same time. The difference between first access and the launch is typically during first access, we like to take a couple weeks and gather as many uh, pieces of feedback or issues that people are running into or things we might have forgotten or like it's a way to give you guys a discount to get in early and get us feedback on things that matter to you. So first access is a great time to give us that feedback, or if there's a specific feature that is missing that you think needs to be there, if it's something we can add in, we will. Um, so we got about 2 weeks to do it. So once official release happens, those things kind of slow down a little bit because we're focused more on stability. We focus more on crashes. Obviously, bug fixes and crashes are the highest priority when we're in the official release mode. First access, there there's going to be some amount of those that people uncover because once we have many more people playing this game than just me or just Gary or just our beta testers. Like we start getting a lot more um, information on the how the game's performing across a multitude of different platforms and different PCs and specs and laptops and new ones and old ones and 5090s and all that stuff. But yeah, the biggest thing with First Access is you get to play the game early and you get to give us feedback and shape some things. So it's definitely something that we enjoy doing. Um, it's a lot more relaxed, a lot more fun to just chat about the things, about the features, and get them in there. So official release will be a little bit more stable because we'll have the like I said that 2 weeks of um, just kind of running it through its paces and expanding on things. But then after all that's done, the game gets a lot more stable for the release. Um, Yeah, as far as I know, the coupons they're so the first access price is already discounted in the store, and then as far as I know, Gary has always for many years has sent out additional coupon codes to people who bought previous versions of the game. As long as you signed up for emails and you're getting emails from Wolverine, I think those those will go through and it gives you a little bit of an additional discount. If you've purchased one of our games, sorry, if you've purchased one of our games in the past and you don't have any of those coupons, by all means, reach out to us on the support site or on Discord, ping Gary, and he can check into it and get you set up. I think. And yeah, so it's going to be a fun release. This is a lot of medium to large size changes that I think are going to have much bigger impacts than the way I talk about them and the way I show them. They seem I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, just normal things. But man, when you get in there, I think they're really going to change the way some of these people play the game. Either you're playing it in sandbox and just running big simulations, or you're playing career mode, trying to manage your team, or whether you're glutton to punishment. You want to go into an online league and try it there. I think some of these things are really going to change the way the game plays for all of those people. So, and again, I think what makes this game fun for me to build and fun for you guys to play is that we try and make it work for everybody. Uh, try and people who want to take it seriously can get really in depth in the way that the sim works, and people who just want to sim and have some fun and see if they can take Indiana to a national title, they can do that too. So there's a lot there's a lot in here. If it seems overwhelming, don't worry. There's a lot of things you can safely ignore or skip or not worry about a particular screen. And then yeah, you can just focus on having fun with the game, and then you know take part in the aspects of it that are most interesting to you. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it back on Texas State. I think Texas State's gonna be an interesting story this year. And that's not just because I live in Austin. Texas State's fun joining a Pac-12 and that kind of thing. So they might be my new demo team for a while. Getting tired of OSU and Texas, near and dear to my heart, but Texas State's fun too. So, all right, we're coming up on the hour. If there's any particular screens or any last minute questions you guys have, you want to post them, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping up and cheers to a new first access. Cheers to CF27. Again, hope to see all you guys in Discord or the forum. WolverineStudios.com is the website where you can get first access. Uh, Gary's redone the website. There's a lot of really good information there. And yeah, hope to see you guys all around. And hopefully we'll do another one of these, maybe a couple more streams. And if you're interested, some of the streams I did deep dives on things like the recruiting and that kind of stuff are already up on the Wolverine Studios YouTube channel. So feel free to check us out there as well. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me for a little while. And hope you enjoy the game. We're pretty proud of it. We've had fun building it, and we're going to keep working on it. So enjoy First Access, and we'll see you guys around. Have a great night, and hope your week has started off well. We'll see you guys next time.